Hi, my name is Sarah Hammond, and I did my speech on Ted Bundy. Theodore Robert Coswell, later to become known as Ted Bundy, was born on November 24th, 1946, in Burlington, Vermont. His mother was very young and unwed when she became pregnant with Ted, so she had him at Elizabeth Lund's home for unwed mothers, and then had her parents, Ted's grandparents, raise him. They told everyone, including Ted, that his grandparents were really his parents and that his biological mother was his sister. Ted believed this for many years and was confused and hurt when he discovered the truth. So this made him resent his mother for never telling the truth herself, and he never really knew who his real father was because she changed the story multiple times. Ted's grandmother was very timid and had major problems with depression, and his grandfather was both physically and emotionally abusive and had a very short temper. When Ted was 4 years old, his biological mother took Ted away from his grandparents and moved in with other family members, but soon met a new husband and they all moved in together shortly after. Ted did not like his biological mother's new husband, even though he had adopted him, and thought that he was dumb and poor and never thought of him as his real father. When Bundy went to a university, he met the first true love of his life, nicknamed Stephanie Burns. He dropped out of college and worked many minimum wage jobs, but broke down when Stephanie broke off the relationship with him due to his immaturity and moved back to her hometown. It is believed that shortly after this, he also learned the truth about his grandparents being, or his parents being his grandparents and his sister being his mother, and this mixed with the breakup truly could be determined the turning point as to what changed the rest of his life. Shortly after this, Ted Bundy moved to Seattle and re-enrolled into college to continue on with his educational and career goals. Ironically enough, he took a job at a suicide hotline crisis center where he would work at night, convincing people to continue living, and he saved many lives doing this job. Bundy began working in politics and started law school, finally getting his life back together. He rekindled his relationship with Brooks, since she was amazed at how grown up he had become. He then proposed to Brooks and told her that he wanted to spend the rest of his life with her, and then left her abruptly without any notice. She was very confused and couldn't figure out why, and when she finally got a hold of him, he just said, "I don't know what you're talking about," and just hung up on her. This was his final way of enacting revenge on her for leaving him years before. When it comes to the murder, no one really knows for sure when Ted Bundy committed his first murder, since he told many different people many different stories. Some believe he committed his first murder of an 8-year-old girl when he was only 14 years old, but he denied ever doing this. It is known that he did for sure begin his known killing spree when he was 27 years old. The first documented crime against women he committed was against Karen Sparks, when he beat her half to death in her bed with a metal rod and then sexually assaulted her as well, all while she was asleep. It took her 10 days to wake up and has many permanent mental and physical disabilities due to the beating and the assaults. This incident happened right after Bundy had broken up with his ex, Brooks. 1974 then became a very scary year around the University of Washington for female college students because they were beginning to disappear rapidly. At first, the dots were not connected, but it soon became clear that all of the victims were very similar. They were all young, pretty, white college students who had long hair that was always parted down the middle. Witnesses began telling the police about seeing a man wearing an arm sling or a cast on his leg with crutches, talking to the women who had disappeared, asking for help loading things into his car, which was a Volkswagen Beetle. Bundy also worked at this time at the Department of Emergency Services, which was a state agency which was involved in the search for these women. This helped him to stay on top of what the police knew and knew if they had caught on to his scent yet or not. His murder spree took a break for a while since he was accepted into a new law school. However, he realized that the classes were too advanced for him and he could not keep up, which disappointed him and sent him back into his previous murderous tendencies. Bundy was finally arrested after multiple murders on August 16, 1975, by a Utah Highway Police patrol officer after he was spotted in a neighborhood at odd times. When Bundy saw the police car, he tried to flee, but was pulled over and his car was searched. This is when the officer found Bundy's rape and murder kit, which gave the officer reason to arrest him. While they did not have enough evidence to hold him, this incident did put Bundy on their radars. The detectives were finally putting the pieces together and connecting many of the murders and disappearances to Bundy. Finally, on March 1st, 1976, Bundy was found guilty of kidnapping and assaulting a woman who was able to get away and identify him. While he was in prison, he was also charged with the murder of another woman, which got him moved to a new prison, which he would take full advantage of. Bundy decided to be his own lawyer because he was actually very smart, which gave him access to the courthouse's library. While there, he waited till no one was around and jumped out of a two-story window. He sprained his ankle with the fall, but otherwise was unharmed and ran into the Aspen Mountains. He managed to escape detection for 6 days, but then was caught after stealing a car and getting pulled over once again. He was sent back to prison. Once he was back, he began planning his next escape by acquiring floor plans of the prison and a hacksaw, which he used to saw through the bars of his ceiling while other prisoners showered. He made many practice runs to make sure he could get out without being caught, and waited until December 30th, when most of the guards were on Christmas break, and broke out through the chief jailer's apartment, who happened to be out on a date with his wife. Bundy dressed in the jailer's clothes and walked out a free man. He then traveled around the states, making sure no one could follow him, either by train or car or bus, and finally made it down to Florida. He stated that he wanted to leave his criminal past behind and find an honest living in Florida. But this would not stick, since when he tried to get a job, he was denied because he had no identification. This is when he began stealing again, which led him right back down his dark path of murder. January 15th, 1978, Bundy broke into Florida State University sorority house and beat and sexually assaulted 4 different women in a 15-minute time span. The shocking thing about this is there were about 30 other women around, and not one of them heard a thing. He then kidnapped and killed a 12-year-old girl less than a month later. He was beginning to run out of money once again and began stealing, which made him even more paranoid. So he stole a car and tried to flee the area, but was pulled over because of the stolen vehicle. When the officer tried to arrest Bundy, Bundy fought him and tried to grab the officer's gun. Luckily, he was not successful and was arrested and processed where they found out who he was and what he had done. Bundy thrived at his trial in Florida. He once again acted as his own defense and enjoyed when nobody knew what he was going to do, and treated the entire event like it was a game. He stated that he would take a plea bargain and then refuse the deal at the last minute just to throw everybody off. He was found ultimately guilty and was sentenced to death. He then had a second trial in Orlando for the kidnapping and murder of the 12-year-old girl, and was found guilty once again. But because he had to be the center of attention and be in charge, he took advantage of the loophole in the law system during his penalty phase of the trial, and asked his girlfriend to marry him while she was on stand, and then proceeded to marry himself to her in the middle of a murder sentencing trial. This just goes to show what type of person Ted Bundy really was. He would end up having 3 death penalties put onto him, all involving the electric chair. Ted Bundy was in prison on death row in Florida for 9 years, which he took full advantage of, extending as long as he could by telling the police that he had information about other murders that either he had committed or that other people had committed, but he claimed to know why or where the bodies were. This worked a few times, but the police finally realized that he truly didn't know much more than they did, or he was unwilling to tell them the whole truth, so they decided on the death date and carried it out. Bundy was executed by electric chair on January 24th, 1989, at the age of 42. In all, Bundy had selfishly taken the lives of over 30 innocent women for his own sexual pleasures. Ted Bundy was a horrible man, and a whole group of people gathered outside of the prison in Florida and celebrate the day that he died. Finally, a monster was killed. Thank you.